So I'm going to die, I'm going to die. I'm going to be comfortable, I don't want to be in pain.
He came right out and said, you have pneumocystic pneumonia, and I asked him what it was, and he said AIDS.
I've heard a few comments from various residents saying, like, God, we're so glad to have people who want to look after us.
I think your time will be soon. What do you think? You hope so. I think your hope is going to be realized real soon.
To me, our emphasis is not on the dying. It's on the living of the last days.
Chris Brownlie Hospice lies in the hills of Elysian Park near downtown Los Angeles. It opened on the day after Christmas in 1988. It has 25 beds, a staff of 40, and many volunteers. And all of its residents have AIDS. They also have families and friends and loved ones and unfinished business. They have every reason to care about life, but none of them has more than a few months to live. They have turned away from aggressive medical treatments, choosing to die perhaps a little sooner than they might at a hospital, but with dignity and in peace. Already more Americans have died of AIDS than were killed in the Vietnam War, and the annual toll is expected to increase steadily. Our story covers a month in the spring of 1989. It is set in a world where life and death go hand in hand. Here, AIDS withers dreams and mocks ambition, but it also unlocks courage, compassion, and love, and sometimes brings new richness of experience and understanding. Castagnola, a Franciscan priest, is Brownlie's social worker. Today he is meeting for the first time with Everett Wooden, who came to the hospice 3 days ago. Everett was a school teacher in Los Angeles for 13 years and then went into the restaurant business. He learned a year ago that he had AIDS. Within 6 months, he had become too ill to work. At first, he pursued medical treatments to prolong his life, but now he has changed his mind.
I just said, I don't want to do this. I don't want to live this kind of life. I'd rather die.
What was it that moved you in that direction?
Well, I just got to the point where I just couldn't stand the feeling any longer of just being pumped full of all of this stuff. I know that it, you know, was supposedly designed to help me, but I was getting, not necessarily weaker, but I was not myself by any means. And I developed like a Parkinsonian state where you were shaking and so on like that, and drooling and everything, and it was just, you know, a reaction to all the different drugs. And I had IVs in both arms, and if you had to go to the bathroom, it was always a hassle. And I just decided that I knew that if this was going to be a regular part of my life, that I wasn't going to live that way. I just couldn't live that way.
Everett he lets you in and he lets you close, and he lets you know when he's wanting to cry or afraid. I think he's going to be someone that we get real attached to.
Every week, Brownlie staff meets to discuss the residents.
I stopped by his room. He asked me, he said, when I was walking by, do you talk about death before we die? And I said, yeah, that's a lot of what we do.
Rick Pimentel-Habib is the bereavement counselor at the hospice.
And I really sensed he's finishing his business with all his relationships, and he said to me, my ex-wife is coming in tomorrow. And he did have a concern about how long will it be. He said, do you know, is it a surprise or can you tell?
A week has passed, and though Everett's condition seemed stable when he arrived, it is now suddenly worsened.
He said Friday before I went off, I'm going to try and be gone by Sunday. I'm going to will myself. And he's doing a really good job of it. I mean, within 2 days, He's really, really deteriorated.
How are you feeling?
Terrible.
Do you have any pain?
Kathleen Doheny is Brownlie's head nurse.
Within this hospice, he's the first one that I've come across that's really willed himself. You know, more people I've seen, they will themselves, but they lose it. After a day or two, they can't continue it. But he's really carrying it through. He's determined. And I think why he can do it so well is because he's so ready for it. And he's at total peace.
Are you ready, you think, for yourself to let yourself go?
Definitely.
You want to die?
Yeah.
That feels okay in here for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't wait, Everett, can you?
Everett, when you think about dying, what kind of feelings do you have? Is it okay? Is it scary? Is it peaceful? Or a mixture? All of the above? Yeah, I think your time will be soon. What do you think? You hope so. I think your hope is going to be realized real soon.
By the next day, Everett is close to death.
Everett?
Staff members visit him frequently,
Everett?
but he no longer responds to them.
You having pain?
His breathing is irregular. There'll be times when he stops breathing for a moment and then he starts again. He's in that in-between. It's hard to even describe where he's at right now, except for he's just waiting. Does not breathe, I think.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
During the night, 11 days after arriving at the hospice, Everett Wooden died. AIDS ran its course more quickly with Everett than it usually does. On the average, people with AIDS survive 2 years after their diagnosis before succumbing to a complex of wasting, multiple infections, and cancers. Sometimes the disease attacks their minds as well as their bodies. Drugs may prolong their lives, but none has yet been able to save them. The founders of Brownlie Hospice intended as a model of care for people in the final stages of AIDS. The hospice tries to make the last weeks of life as comfortable as possible for its residents and to help family members and loved ones deal with their loss. The hospice is named for Chris Brownlie, a gay political activist who has AIDS. Early in 1987, Brownlie had an attack of AIDS-related pneumonia and lay on a gurney in an admitting ward at Los Angeles County Hospital for 3 days because no bed was available.
In some ways, this was a little moment. It's one person's little struggle with AIDS, but it you know, acquired a certain kind of significance because of the time in which it happened and the particular conjuncture of forces that were around at the time.
Brownlie and a group of fellow activists had been protesting the poor quality of care for people with AIDS. His experience gave a new urgency to their work. Within months, they had started an organization called the AIDS Hospice Foundation. Brownlie Hospice is its first facility. Most of the funding for launching the hospice came from state and local governments, which understood its economic advantage. Care at Brownlie costs $200 a day, as opposed to $1,000 a day at a hospital. In the 2.5 months since the hospice opened, 19 residents have died, but few welcome death as Everett Wooden did, and the real day-to-day business of the hospice is living, not dying.
Walk into the frame, Robert, before you...
Robert Childs, head of collections at UCLA's Museum of Cultural History, was working until he entered a hospital 6 weeks ago for tests. The hospital discharged him to Brownlie. He came here a week before Everett, gravely ill, unable to walk, and mentally confused. But he has gradually improved, and now questions whether he really belongs here.
As a place, it's gorgeous. The staff is wonderful. The food is extraordinarily good. But I want out as soon as possible. I want to be out on the street. This, after all, as wonderful as it is a dying house. And it just has a bad connotation to me. In the last, I gather, 2 or 3 weeks, 6 people have died. That came somewhat as a shock when I found out about that today. I mean, I knew, that has to happen, but it's one thing to know that it has to happen, another thing to see it happen.
Most residents are not as reluctant as Robert to accept being at the hospice. The majority come here knowing they will stay, and they make few plans.
Okay.
Rich Kushner is Brownlie's medical director. Francisco during the early days of the AIDS epidemic. He takes 2 days of each week away from his private practice to come to the hospice. And today he is seeing a 25-year-old man who has just arrived and is having trouble sleeping.
Patrick, hi. I'm Dr. Kushner. What do you think is keeping you up the most? Just a change in environment again and...
No, the mental thing of having AIDS and
And you've had problems sleeping for a while?
I'm up all the time.
Okay, it's not the foot pain, though, that's keeping you up, you don't think?
It's that, and it's everything.
Okay, because maybe if we get that under control and some other things...
And then I tried to kill myself. I went through a big mess with that.
When was that?
About a month ago.
And this is while you were in one of the hospices?
No, it was out at home.
This is when you were home?
Because I couldn't sleep.
Okay. No, I can give you something stronger. I don't want to zonk you out, though, either, but I mean, if you just get a couple of good nights...
I want to be zonked out. I need to be zonked out.
All the time, or just at night?
Just at night, zonked out,
Patrick Everhart has been in and out of various facilities. Lately, he'd been living with his mother, but when she had to rent out a room in her apartment to make ends meet, she found that nobody wanted to share quarters with a man with AIDS, and so she arranged for Patrick to move to Brownlie.
They expect me to go downstairs and eat in the morning, and I get up and I'm nauseated and I'm dizzy, because I haven't had no sleep.
So you're getting up later?
That's what it's from, no sleep. I keep telling these doctors, too, that something mental is going to go wrong. I'm going to get dementia or something. I'm going to drive myself crazy.
Okay, all right, we'll break that cycle. That seems to be one thing that's really bothered you that hasn't been addressed, and then we can move on from there.
Interesting enough, this is his, according to him, 3rd hospice placement. From what I could gather, one of the hospices obviously closed, and then another one, from what he told me, is that he was kicked out or didn't get along with the people. I don't know whether there was anything dealing with substance abuse or other things.
He told me what it was. He was saying he used to hustle, and he had brought this out to one of the people from the at the hospice, and for that reason, he said that they just pushed him away.
Even though he wasn't behaving in that form in the hospice?
Just because of what he had done, which is his way, why he thinks he's sick, how he thinks he got it. But he said, as soon as I let people know this about me, they just turned their backs on me.
He's had 3 attempts, hasn't he?
Yes, that's another thing that's come forward, that he's had some suicidal attempts. He's not demented. He's pretty clear. He's apparently ambulatory.
He's ambulatory, he's quite lethargic. He's like, basically, if you just want to say he's wasting away in there in his room, smoking. We need to watch him smoking. We've burned many blankets now with Patrick. And he needs plenty of encouragement to get up, come downstairs, and mix in with the rest of the residents.
A week has passed, and Robert Childs has gained strength. He's replaced his walker with a cane.
The cane is enormously liberating. I can climb stairs, for instance, which absolutely is impossible with a walker. And it just, frankly, looks more elegant than a walker.
So why don't I have Ginger touch base with you.
Robert has now told the staff that he intends to leave the hospice.
What you're thinking about, what your goal is that you'd like to
Go back to my apartment.
so you need to talk with your physician about that when you see him and see.
Yeah, and then I want to go back to work at UCLA. Now, I could profitably work there right now because I don't have to move around. I can do all the work that I would do sitting down. It just would be easier if I could move around a little more.
Oh, you'll be the first one sprung from here.
Really?
I mean, out the front door, yes.
Out the front door, yeah. Great. I'd love to establish records
You'll be
like
the
that.
pioneer. You really will.
My question is this. I really believe that as much as he's alert and intelligent and oriented, that he has a dementia progressing. And I think that that's clouding his ability to really set realistic goals and objectives for himself. But every once in a while, you just see this change and this euphoria. It's almost a little bit like a manic depressive, type of a syndrome. Yeah. And then he starts laughing. And he's such a happy, such a beautiful person. However, I think I'd like to have him nipped in the bud if he is indeed not going to be able to go home and not be able to go back to work.
I haven't wanted to take away his denial. He has said to me things when I've spoken to him, boy, you're really doing better. You're using the walker. You've moved upstairs. That's great. And he'll look at me and he'll say, you're damn right, because I want to get out of here. And that's why I'm fighting. Now, I still haven't, now that kind of feistiness, I'm not going to argue with.
Part of what's going on is when you feel a little bit better, it's hard to believe that you're sick. And one of the ways maybe you feel a little bit better is to cope by putting things out of your mind or denying that it's happening right now.
Susan Masuoka has worked with Robert over the past 10 years. She remembers when he first told her that he had AIDS.
When I heard it, it was, I gasped. And it was something that, we could see him losing weight, and we knew that he hadn't been well, but something you just don't want to believe about, something that you care about.
A year after Susan learned that Robert was ill, he asked her to join him in preparing a museum show on a family of Mexican folk artists. He had been working on the project for some time.
He said, I don't want to be morbid about this, but he says, I'm just facing reality, and I know you'll finish.
Robert no longer talks about not finishing his project.
This fighting spirit has come to the surface, and you can really see him fighting for everything.
Once I am allowed on the streets, then I will start work immediately. Now, if that weren't a possibility, that probably would really depress me. It would mean I'd, probably want to just sort of hang out in bed and vegetate and die.
It's not frightening me. A lot of people are frightened about it, but I'm not. So I'm going to die, I want to be comfortable, I don't want to be in pain. And that's what they promise you here.
Patrick, when I pass his room, looks like he's dead at least 6 times a day. His eyes are rolled back, and he's just laying there. But there's nothing to his life. I mean, there's no quality. It's just...
Patrick stays up all night long. And
well, there we go then.
During the first part of the day, and around 3:30, 4 in the evening, he starts perking up.
Daryl Woods is a nurse and Brownlie's admissions coordinator.
But he stays up all night long.
The question is, there really wasn't a very high quality of his life before he got ill. So, I mean, it's like you can't create what wasn't there.
Despite Bernie's concern, the question of how to improve Patrick's life goes unresolved.
That's what concerns me.
6 residents have died in the past 2 weeks. It's It's time for one of the periodical gatherings of staff, residents, and loved ones that the hospice has decided to call celebrations rather than memorials. The celebrations are part wake, part family get-together, part ritual leave-taking. People talk about their memories of the dead, they cry or laugh, and they write notes that will be placed in a balloon and released over the hospice.
I remember Guadalupe. Actually, I want to remember him. One of the things he told me when he first came here, I asked him if he had any family or anybody, and he said no. Then he told me later on he had very few in Mexico, but he didn't want them to know because he felt ashamed. But then he looked at me and said, I wonder if anybody will ever know that I lived. So it's important for me to remember him. I don't think I'll ever forget his name because he was so concerned that his name would be forgotten.
It's just really hard to let go.
Carol Lee's brother, Philip, died at Brownlie just a day after he was transferred here from a hospital.
It's just been a few days. Well, he passed away Saturday morning. And he struggled for a long time. He was in the hospital 5 weeks. And we knew it was coming, but it was still very, very difficult. I was really worried that he was going to die alone. And
he really didn't.
I know. I really feel good about that. I'm really reassured. It's so much better than dying in that hospital.
Though the celebrations were originally intended for staff members, only a handful of them usually attend, and of those who do, most remain silent.
From my own standpoint, I don't see staff members going to make a point of coming back to refresh pain. I don't like it because I do shed the tears. Because I remember, not sad times all the time, but I remember some of the way he smiled or the way he was looking. Just depends on what kind of death they had. Whether it be the empty look of the eyes that's asking for help still, even at the point where they're fixing to die, or whether it was, you know, the smile of saying, I'm going home now. I don't know, I don't handle that very well. I don't know how to cope with that because you're empty. It's an empty feeling.
Until a year ago, Darrell worked in Mississippi as a psychiatric nurse. He knew little about hospice care until he joined the staff here.
Since I've always been scared of death and dying, I've never even wanted to know what it's about. You know, I wouldn't even work with geriatric patients because of the dying process.
Like many of the staff, Darrell has had to learn to face the hospice's steady stream of death. He had never even seen an AIDS patient until he moved to Los Angeles.
Honestly speaking, the first guy that I saw who had AIDS, yeah, I cried. It just devastated me because this isn't how humans look.
I've heard a few comments from various residents saying like, God, we're so glad to have people who want to look after us. I've seen nurses literally gown up from head to toe as if they were going in to exterminate a room full of termites to look after AIDS patients. They'll glove up. Everything will be seen but the eyes. So the contact the patient would have with that nurse would be eyes, and that would be it.
For the staff, each new resident represents a new set of possibilities. Some maintain strong connections with their former lives, but others seem to begin their lives afresh when they come here.
Come in.
Quinte Brown came to Los Angeles from Memphis to live with an aunt when he was 15. Now he's 27. He has known for several years that he has AIDS, but he got little medical attention until he spent 5 weeks in County Hospital early in 1989. From there, he came to Brownlie.
Before you went to County Hospital, Where were you living? Kind of on the street, or where were you living at?
I wasn't on the street. I was in a warehouse.
You were living in a warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
What about trying to find your mom? Would you like me to try and...
No.
You're interested in her?
I would want my mother to see me like this. I couldn't, you know, and that, if I did self-consciously have pressures on it, that would probably bring everything out and everything, you know, I couldn't.
Okay, it's whatever you want. Some people do, and we help them to find somebody that they've been out of touch with. Some other folks don't want to. It's whatever you want. We respect.
She wants to see me, but I don't want to see her.
You don't want her to see
No.
you. Do you feel like your body has changed a lot? See, I didn't know you before you got sick.
Yes.
His option for him at the time of discharge from county was to come to us, go back living on the streets and dying on the streets. So he was happy to be coming here. He doesn't want me to contact his mother in Memphis, and the reason he told me is he doesn't, so many of our residents say this, I don't want her to see me like this. So the issue of shame, which is very unique to this disease, again sticks its head up.
Do you know if
causes
they know
isolation.
that he was in the hospital?
No, they have no idea.
Staff members know that AIDS has unpredictable ups and downs. Sometimes it backs off for a while and turns a person into a long-term hospice resident.
The man in red.
Terry Muncie was an air conditioning and heating mechanic until his illness forced him to stop working 2 years ago. He's just turned 40.
A lot of people, when they turn 40, go through like a traumatic experience, midlife crisis or whatever. But I was looking forward to reaching 40, and I did. I made it.
Terry arrived at Brownlie a month ago, prepared to die.
I was feeling so bad, and I didn't think I was going to get better. And I felt as though I was going to be a burden on my family, and I just wanted to go to sleep and not wake up.
He could hardly breathe, he could hardly talk, he could never manage a smile, he was always wincing, everything was always wrong.
Very slowly, Terry's condition began to improve.
Seems like a miracle. At first I didn't have the will to live. Now it's hard for me to sleep because I look forward to the next day.
Today, Terry, with the help of his brother Wally, is moving to the second floor. Because of a fire regulation, only residents who can get around on their own can live upstairs. Moves between floors consequently have great symbolic significance for all residents. The upper floor is farther from the end. Besides the improvement in Terry's health, Wally sees other changes in him as well.
He was a kind of to-himself guy emotionally. You know, if you got him to say something about how he really felt about things once a year, every year or two, was really something. And then, as part of this experience here at this hospice, he has opened up so much, and he can say, I love you, he can cry, he can do all those things.
The family's just been beautiful. I have a lot more support than I ever dreamed I was going to get.
Some of the diseases associated with AIDS, like pneumocystis pneumonia, and the skin cancer called Kaposi sarcoma, can be held at bay at least temporarily with drugs. But when the HIV virus that appears to cause AIDS enters the central nervous system, few treatments are effective. Many of Brownlie's residents are here because they have reached that stage of the disease. Alfred Dodd is one of them. 2.5 years have passed since Al first learned that he had AIDS. He soon had to stop working, but he remained at home until a month ago when he had what appeared to be a stroke. When the doctor at the emergency room said nothing could be done, his lover, Fred Seaman, transferred him here.
There's been times when I have felt guilty about doing that, you know. And then later, no, because I couldn't handle him at home, I couldn't care for him at home, and I certainly couldn't hire a nurse for 24 hours a day. I couldn't afford that.
It's very nice. You know, you're getting something that the hospital's not going to give you. Hospital ain't going to give you wake up time, you know. Right, wake up time, get a shot, you know. It's time to go to bed, or, you know, this, that, and the other. Here, we can stay up and watch TV till dawn, and, you know. And I like that. You know, it's not the idea I like that. It's just the idea that I like the part where I can do what I want to instead of you telling me to do what you want to.
Fred has been with Al for a long time.
I'm in love with him. We've been lovers for over 10 years. And so I come 3 times a day.
Al seems resigned, but the staff worries that Fred isn't ready to face the fact that Al will soon die.
You want to go home? Yeah, yes or no? You do. Okay, I think we're going to make arrangements sometime the first week in April.
I keep fooling myself all the time by saying, you know, you're going to get better, you're going to get better. And what else can you say to a dying patient? You know, well, you've got 3 more hours to live. What do you want to do? You know, I mean, they don't want to hear that. They want to... I wouldn't want to hear that. I'd like some encouragement, whether it's... Even if it's a lie. Lie to me. I wouldn't want the truth about that.
It's been 3 weeks since Patrick arrived. He continues to be troublesome for the staff. They think he expects to be waited on too much and doesn't want to do anything for himself. They're also afraid that his smoking in bed could lead to a fire. They have now decided that Patrick's medication should be reduced to make him more alert.
I know the guy is dying, but it doesn't give him a license to be disruptive and destructive and, you know, antisocial and everything. I mean, he's still in a home-like environment where there are other residents, and he has to respect that. That's how I feel. And he's not going to get away with all these things just because he's dying.
Number one, why the hell doesn't he come down to meals?
Because they cater to him upstairs. They don't make them come downstairs.
Eat in their seat. If he could begin at least...
gotten a free ride here, yeah. He's been
social interaction in terms of helping him to cope. Because what happens here is the residents really become the support system and they help each other to cope. If he could get into that, I mean, I don't believe anything is more effective than what they're doing for themselves. So that would perhaps be what we could do to replace all the drugs, is to get him into more of a social milieu with some of the rest, and some of the, you know, just basic stuff.
My suggestion is to explain this to him. Hospice is the residents having a say in their care, and I wouldn't just walk, if I was a CNA, I wouldn't just walk by and say, lunch is downstairs, or dinner's downstairs, come on. I would sit down and say, what we want is really for you to come downstairs. And we want that because such and such. You didn't get anywhere?
I sat in there with them and, you know, gone through all that with them in a nice, diplomatic, firm, as I thought, way.
Yeah.
And he said, I just don't have the energy to come downstairs. I don't have the energy to...
He has the energy to... I've seen him run down the stairs, so it's total bunk. And you can give that back to him and say, well, that's not consistent. You're not telling the truth. You're not being honest. You're not being real.
That's hard to do.
Sure,
Because he looks at you with these mournful eyes, and I go, oh, my.
Called manipulation.
I know.
How are you? I want to talk to you. I hear you have some plans.
Robert Childs is still pressing the hospice about his desire to get back to work. And today, Mitch is trying to assess whether this is realistic.
What's your understanding of your condition now and the future or the possibilities for the future?
Oh, okay. My understanding of my condition now is that it's real good, especially in comparison.
In comparison, but do you think, in other words, are you saying that you don't feel like you have the infection anymore?
Oh, no, nothing like that. Okay. Yeah. It's just I'm not an invalid anymore.
Okay, your condition has definitely improved.
Yeah, it's improved.
To add, without any real medications or anything.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Not that, you know, by no means that the primary cause is gone. Okay. And I have no illusions of that.
Okay.
You know, I have HIV, I have ARC, and I have a limited time. It's just that it's not as limited as it looked like it was going to be.
Possibly. You're right.
You know, I thought, actually, a month ago I thought it was dead. Now, since I've been here, since I can walk and I have some independence, this assessment has completely changed. And
you know, maybe you do have, as you say, a lot more time than you thought, and a lot more time than a lot of the physicians thought. I mean, you certainly continue to prove. At the other extent, I want you to be prepared with this illness.
To turn around and fall right over.
Well, there are a lot of falls and then recoveries, and this is often very much the course of this illness.
Yeah.
One thing you came in with, they did diagnose some problems with your vision, with your eyesight. Have you noticed, have you had any changes in that since you've been here?
When Robert first came to the hospice, he was so ill that an AIDS-related eye infection called CMV retinitis seemed relatively unimportant. Now it may be significant.
The retinitis, how progressive? Well, it's again like the disease itself. It can be, it can go to blindness, and it can go very quickly, in a matter of days, or it could just be a very slowly progressive thing for months, a year. You know, it can be that kind of thing.
Unfortunately, the eye thing would sort of screw up all of the others.
Yeah.
But
there's always something.
There's always something.
Yeah.
And I might be able to walk around and look at the artifacts, but if I can't see them, it sort of kills it.
There is an experimental drug for treating CMV retinitis, and Robert may qualify for it. He and Mitch decide that he should see an eye doctor for further tests.
All right, I'll see you later, Robert.
Okay, bye-bye. Oh, wonderful. Blindness.
He might temporarily be one that goes out the front door.
But how about dementia? Do you feel any dementias going on?
Right now, I think he's pretty clear and pretty understanding of what's going on.
What I find sometimes is his emotions are inappropriate to the topic that he's dealing with. He'll be talking about, of course I'm dying, and laugh. Well, I'm not sure if it's a way if it's a coping mechanism or if it's the affect being affected by the dementia.
My impression is that it's his personality. You know how some people will sort of giggle and chuckle when they're really fearful? I get that impression from him, because even now he mentioned something about blindness, and he chuckled, but you knew very well that he's very fearful of that and aware of that possibility. I've made him aware of that, and I think he's very conscious of that. So that's not really where his dementia comes through. I think the dementia comes through more with his forgetfulness, his attention span. I think it's a milder dementia than what you're suggesting,
Although Los Angeles is second only to New York in the number of its AIDS cases, during these early weeks of operation, Brownlie has yet to fill all its beds. The staff has found that many doctors are reluctant to tell their patients that they have only a little time left to live.
I had a private patient that I thought was appropriate for the hospice, and it was very difficult for me to talk to him about that, because he was really wanting to fight and continue to fight, although I felt that he had reached a point where it was really useless for him. First, let me have you sit up, and I want to take a good listen and see what you sound like. It's very difficult to sit down with someone, a young man, and tell them that there's nothing more that can be done and that they'll probably be dead. Real deep,
In spite of having heard the worst about his condition, Quinte is cheerful and optimistic about pulling his life back together.
They said that within 2 to 5 years you're supposed to show some signs, right? And I don't feel no different in everything that I felt before I even, got the disease, which I got it by doing intravenous drugs. I want to be like I was before I started doing drugs and stuff. All I wanted to me is a soda and to dance, And I was happy. I could sip on that soda all night and, go back to the dance floor.
Here Quinte has new friends and a home away from the street.
Why don't you come outside with me? We'll try it outside. You're always on the go in an acute facility. Here, it's a much slower pace, and you can sit down and be that bit more relaxed. And unless you really force yourself, you're going to become attached to a certain amount of residents. Even though they have AIDS, and I'm aware of it, I don't come in every morning thinking, I'm going to look after a bunch of AIDS people today. It just doesn't cross my mind that way. Like, for instance, Terry Muncie. You know, Quinte as well. I come in and I see them as kind of old pals, really, and try and help them out, but I don't look at them and say, he's got AIDS, until I'm sitting down with them and they suddenly want to talk about it and want to talk about their condition, what they did in their life. Then it kind of burns me up inside, this awful disease.
Get up in bed, okay? There we go.
Jeff Hutchinson is one of Brownlie's nursing assistants.
A lot of the patients we get real close to, the ones who come in and stay a while. Some of them are like my children, and the others are like my brothers or my fathers even. Of course, it breaks your heart when they die, when you think of them as your family, in which they are. They feel like my family.
I think he refused to shake earlier, didn't he? They've been very, very caring. I don't see how they do the job, to be honest with you. To me, it's the most depressing place there is in the world. When you see them roll them in, roll them out, I mean, and I've seen such sad cases come in. I just can't accept that. I just can't. Maybe one of these days I will, but right now I can't.
Fred Seaman is constantly by Al's side, but in spite of his encouragement, Al grows weaker and weaker.
He told me last week he'll be glad when it's all over. So he's stopped fighting now. So it's like part of me going. I try to do whatever I can to help him. But there's nothing I can do except be there for him, you know. I try to console him, and sometimes I do little things that the nursing staff doesn't have time to do it. You know, like brushing his teeth. And now he's reached a point where the virus has entered the brain. Sometimes you'll know me, sometimes you won't. His energy level has gone down so far that he can't hold a pencil or a pen. He has to be fed. And of course he eats very little because he's not hungry.
You had too much? This is the last one.
I always try to say there's a little ray of hope somewhere, you know, that things might make a turn for the best. It doesn't work that way, but not in certain diseases anyway that are terminal.
I have a great concern for Fred, and here's my concern. Al has been his life, and actually what's happening, he is dying himself along with Al, and he is being very self-destructive. Yesterday he ate 5 different sweets between 8 and 9 in the morning. We're talking a brittle diabetic on insulin.
Staff members have invited Fred to counseling sessions, but he has turned them all down.
It really gets to me from the family side and the mental anguish. It's too much.
3 days later, Al's ordeal ended.
Al died real peaceful last night.
Did he?
Yeah. I got real concerned about Fred, you know, when we went through the rituals of, you know, checking pulses, listening for respirations, heartbeat, the BP on him. And I told him he was dead. And he started crying, and I said, "Are you going to be okay?" And he says, "No, I'm not." And then I said, "Do you want to spend some time along with him?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, when you get through, just let us know." And he took off. I mean, I hadn't heard nothing from him since.
I wanted to be here, and I was hurt that I was not. That he didn't wait for me to be here, and I'm able to say goodbye this way, cleaning his room, and feeling where he's been. It feels calm in here, and it feels like he didn't suffer. and he had no pain. So I think we've done our job. And I can clean this room and say goodbye, since I didn't get a chance to tell him goodbye in person.
Today's celebration is for Al Dodd and 3 other Brownlie residents who have died over the past 10 days. The staff hoped that Fred would join them today, but he has stayed away. Al had been at the hospice for 2 months, longer than any other resident.
I thought he was very gentle. And my last memory of him, actually the last 2 memories of him, were with him and Fred 2 weeks before he died, and then the week before he died, he told Fred to close the door in his room, and he literally pulled Fred's ear over, and just whispered in Fred's ear that he loved him, and he thanked him. And I thought, for this big guy to do that was such a incredible, and that's the memory that I would keep of him. Big Al.
Yeah, Al was a real good friend of mine. And I really appreciated the friendship that grew while I was here. He's a good man.
Celebrations only briefly interrupt the staff's work with the living residents. Daily life quickly resumes. After last week, he leaves his room at mealtimes, but his indiscriminate cooking continues to be a problem.
I feel that a lot of it is probably an attention-seeking. It's definitely attention-seeking.
Patrick keeps the staff off balance. He has just asked to be moved downstairs so that his meals will again be brought to his room. No one is sure whether or not it is best to comply with his many demands.
And so naturally, he's loving that because there's confusion not with himself but with staff members. And in these meetings, they discuss it. We're going to do, but nobody follows through.
Well, it was followed through, Darryl, last week, and it was actually working. But what I'm saying is that the way it should be done, or should we?
I mean, he's going to die.
Should we not give him the benefit of the doubt?
But to live his life to the best of his ability, someone's going to hurt him.
Yeah, but who are we to decide, I mean, we can't go to the
You want to move him downstairs and go forward with this?
I'd like to make him happy, basically, is what I want to do, and comfortable, and yet to save this place from being burnt down.
In the end, Patrick got his way. The staff agreed to move him downstairs.
When I first came in here, I thought that all AIDS patients were sick for 3 to 6 months. And that's the way I feel now. I just want to go with it. I want to leave. I'm having a problem with eating. I can't eat food. And I'm sitting here crying away. I'm sure dying can be better than life.
Death seems to have forgotten Terry. Almost every weekend he goes to visit his family, and this weekend he'll be staying with a friend in Palm Springs. It'll be his most ambitious venture since he came to Brownlie 2 months ago.
I won a couple really big battles here. Being able to walk, but your goals they seem to be smaller now, just from one day to the next instead of long-term goals because you don't know what is going to happen. I was looking forward to death. And now that I've had a taste of life again, you want to look forward to it, you know, but you still know that you're going to have another episode down the line.
It was you the other day who asked me why you want to go back to work. And I thought about it first. Yeah, that's true. I'm in love with that place. It's not like you're very passionate about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I really want to be a part of it.
Robert's eyes have been examined by a specialist and found not to be in immediate danger. Now it has been agreed that he will return to work while living for a while longer, at least, at the hospice.
You won and we failed. You know, I sort of imagine a spot out there in the world. I'm going to get to it.
I think what we see in Robert is an extremely strong will to live and survive. Many of the people who have come here have had that same sense, but have grown tired of fighting, and surviving is not, the quality of life isn't there for them.
Robert knows that he is certain to die of AIDS, but he has no interest in preparing himself for his death.
I've never been ready to die. I've never been ready to hurt. And if I'm not ready to, bloody my son, and I'm certainly not ready to bloody my son, then why should I have to be ready to die of AIDS in order to die of AIDS?
Like Robert, Quinte thinks about his old haunts. Last weekend, a volunteer from the hospice took him on an afternoon outing. Quinte had his choice of where to go, and he decided to return to the streets of downtown to see how everybody was.
I spoke to who I wanted to speak to, and then they asked me, when am I coming down here? And I said, well, I'll be back. But unfortunately, I don't want to go back for a long time, you know, because they're not helping themselves. It was the same thing that they were doing when I left. Sleeping on the street, you know, and smoking cocaine. And that's not good at all. And where I am finally got peace of mind, and I'm here and everything, and I'm enjoying myself while they destroying theirs, you know. So I wouldn't trade it and everything to go back down there in that madness. You know, I like it here. Everybody's nice.
Brownlie Hospice is only one small battlefield in the worldwide struggle with AIDS. Here, the virus has claimed 12 more lives in the past month. In the eyes of its founders, the hospice is succeeding in its work. But the relentless rhythm of death makes some people see the hospice as a symbol of surrender to AIDS. Chris Brownlie has felt that reaction.
I've had friends who have written me nasty letters, I mean, almost hate mail, because I was participating in the building of a place which would remind people of their death and of the inevitability thereof. To me, our emphasis is not on the dying, it's on the living of the last days. I am sure, morally sure, that what we're doing is the right thing. That people are dying from this disease. They've been dying in hallways at hospitals or on the street. That we've created a place where they will die as comfortably as they possibly can, surrounded by those who love them, who will be a part of that process, who will be a part of that experience. You know, it's the best we can do.
I always said you can never really get used to somebody dying, but I thought I could cope better. But there was a resident here whom I was more close to than I thought, and he died of me quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and when I went into his room about a half an hour before he died, I was rushing in to get him to sign a form, something that wasn't even a priority but seemed a priority to me at the time. And he wasn't well enough to sign it, and I said, don't worry about it, I come back. And he kind of looked at me like with this look of plea or something on his face. And I went out meaning to come back. But I never made it back. Within 15, 20 minutes, I heard somebody scream, such and such a person is, you know, dead. So I went in, and I was very shocked at how I reacted. I was upset, I shook him, I was crying, and I'm even getting tearful now. But it was horrible. I'm sorry, because I was so close to him. Quinte was very special. I don't know why. We just hit it off right from the beginning. And he was special.